everybody. This is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. Once again, we are your hosts, Lehman, Mark, and Jay. And today we hopefully will be wrapping up social perks as well as getting to a couple of emails. Before we jump into that, I do want to mention that the myminifactory.com still has the subscription going for the next 4 months. So through and including December of 2023, there is a subscription where you can pay $5 a month. You get a completely original Torg Eternity adventure as well as STL files for your miniatures. You get about 8 or so minis every adventure that go with that adventure, which is pretty cool. And a lot of the things you might get is a group of 5 Nile shock troopers or Enos warriors or Kanawa security and things like that. So you get a lot of cool minis. You usually get a archetype, a lieutenant, and then a big bad end guy boss as well, and some of those can be the larger miniatures, so that is cool. We still have September dropped, then we have October, November, and December after that. We won't be doing Torg Eternity adventures with that. They might add some Torg Eternity miniatures here and there, but we did complete a full year's worth of an adventure a month, which was pretty cool. And it meant that you were able to get stuff without it being through the Kickstarter. So check that out on myminifactory.com. And now let's move on to emails. So with the emails, we had 2 emails. The first one is from Siskoid, which is talking about it says social perks. Okay, no, this is a question about Lehman's cat. What's the cat's name? And has it ever appeared in one of your games as an NPC? I almost want to connect this to a recent conversation on Discord about whether to allow gene-modded pets to be PCs. In other words, can they be reality rated? Siskoid. So first, my cat, if you're talking about the white, annoying one that always jumps in my lap and wants my attention when I start talking, that is Mars. The other one, my background's blurred, but on the days that I don't have it blurred and you see a little shy cat, that's Muse, and she's kind of the opposite when it comes to that. No, I have not had either Mars nor Musa in my games. I want to say the only cat or the only animal that was in my games, or not my games, I was a player, my brother took the family Chihuahua and transformed it in a superhero game into a like Teenage Ninja Turtle Chihuahua type thing that was the BBEG for the entire campaign. Named Satan, of course, because it was a Chihuahua. That was a devil dog. And also, while I do not like usually showing stuff on the video side of things, because that way our viewers or our listeners can't see if you're listening to the podcast or anything. But this I thought was funny. I just remembered one of my players did introduce their pet, the name Saxon of their cat, and her first character was a take off of the leopard people from Maritika. And her character's background is she didn't like the whole only males could be the leopard men, so she wanted to be the leopard woman. And then she, the character like went to do her own hunt, but instead of killing the leopard, bonded with it, and her leopard was based off of her cat Saxon. And at the time, her like young daughter, we're talking like 6 years old, made a Torg character sheet of Saxon.
It's blurring.
Yeah, it's blurred because I have my background blurred, but there we go.
There you go. Don't move.
That's her Torg character
Nice.
sheet for the reality rated Saxon, because pets and animal companions could have well, actually, I at least house ruled that they could have possibilities in advance. So I just thought
Sure, why not?
cute. As for gene mods and stuff, I don't have any problems with people that want to say that their pets have been augmented by gene mods or experimentations. That's how you get things like Rocket Raccoon and other things. There's that video game currently, I think it's called Stray, that has the cat. One of the backers introduced an animal companion that was the psychic mutant cat. All of that is fine if you, your party, your game master are all okay with it. I let my brother play a Salinger, so I mean that sums up what if somebody gives me a good backstory. Doesn't have to be a long, just give me a good backstory that makes me curious. I will take things that initially would be a no, like a Salinger, or no, like a Jay and I talked about last time, the YouTube or Instagram influencer. And okay, you convinced me. You came up with a cool idea. Let's go with it. So that's what I'll say. Have either of you had any animals or pets who became PCs or NPCs at your tables?
Not directly. The closest I can think of is we were playing the second edition D&D Crypt of Lysandrid the Mad module, and it's like this one where you're going through a lot of mazes and solving puzzles. The kind of thing players hate. Lots of puzzles. But there's one point where you get attacked by a giant cat. It's like the Lich's cat named Tiddles. And we were playing it at our apartment. Like one of the players and I, we both lived there, and he had a cat, and said cat then assaulted the miniatures while we were doing this. So that cat just became Tiddles, and we would take pictures of her like swatting all the miniatures around and everything. So that's probably the closest.
So it was more like a real life thing that got incorporated into the game.
Yeah.
That's fun. Anything from you, Mark?
Never done the pet thing. I mean, that, can they be reality rated or elevated or enlightened or however you want to say it? Sure, I would think, the follower. There you go. Make them into your follower, and as Liam said, come up with a cool backstory and then run with it, because that's just kind of interesting. But if you're going to do that, you got to be ready to have a little heartbreak, because they become a valid target at that point.
Yep.
They are not this isn't like you're toting them around on your hip and they're shielded from all bad things. They're a valid target for anything else. And if the Tharkoldu Alpha decides that he can inflict pain on you by taking out your pet, guess what?
Yeah, so that might be a session 0 thing of, hey, not just I want to play a pet, but hey, are your pet being in danger if you pick all these perks and stuff for it. So yes, that could bring interesting things, but he's
you just saw
I saw the ears.
You see the ears and the tail. That's what he was downstairs and heard me talking. So mosey
your feline overlord wants to see what's going on.
So this will be one of the rare Delphi Council debriefings where he's allowed in the room.
You better be talking nice about me, human.
Okay,
so let's crap in your shoes again.
To the next email. So the next email says, "Hey fellas, thanks again for bringing the debriefing to us each week. I'm grateful to hear the opinions of other GMs and can honestly say what you've had on the show thus far has helped us improve our games already. In fact, speaking to that and desiring to have opinions for something I felt for a long time, I need to improve with my group of friends. I have a question concerning combat and action options, beginning on page 119 of the core rules and culminating on the table on page 129. Do any of you encourage the use of combat and action options by your players? If you do, what tools and or mnemonics do you use to help them remember to effectuate the use of CNA options, whether by chart in the book or specific items? Finally, do you give any sort of bonuses or rewards, rewards/awards for thinking to use them? I've tried various means to encouraging my friends to use the CNA options available to them, but except for the options available in Foundry VTT Torg game system, when a skill is used, none have ever suggested their use. Thanks all, Paul, aka Sir Elaine Fisk. So thanks for writing, Paul. And Jay, what are your thoughts on the combat and action options? Does your table use them, abuse them? What do you think of them, etc.?
Yeah, my table uses almost all of them. I think my home campaign, they never used suppressive fire and they never used weight. But then I was in a Torganized play game on Monday and someone used weight in that game. So I have seen it done. But I think for my group specifically, we had this exact problem, not with Torg, but when we played Hackmaster beforehand, it also has a lot of combat and action options. So you could do like a aggressive attack, you could do a partial defense, a full defense, you can do a charge. There's a lot of options. And I have found in these kind of situations, the best way for players to remember them is to do it to them. So if you want to make a called shot to a vital part on them, they will usually remember it, because if it's a dramatic thing that almost wipes them out, they'll probably remember. And just be sure you're like, you could do this too. Mm-hmm. The other thing is the chart that you mentioned at the end of it, I think it's on page 129.
Yes.
That lists everything. I don't think half of those need to be there, like, because some of the things like cover and concealment, they're not really options, right? So what I did in Hackmaster is I took a lot of the more common ones, like the called shots, the aggressive attack, the hold at bay, all these things, and made cards, or just at first I made just a handout that had them all, but then when I played it in real life with some people, we made cards that had them, so that way you could say, here are some additional options. And I also find the best thing to do is not overwhelm them with everything all at once. Right. You can even design encounters to show how something is used. If you make it so they have to make a called shot to get something out of someone's hand that they otherwise can't reach or something like that, then that's a good way to enforce in their minds that this works. So yeah, I mean, my group uses almost all of these. In fact, sometimes I wish they didn't, because they can really add up and make things take longer. But I don't think they need a specific extra reward. Usually doing it is its own reward, I found anyway.
Mark, your thoughts on the combat action and combat options?
So when Torg Eternity first came out, I built a little kit of cheat sheets, and the second page on it is that table. I just pulled it out of the PDF and threw it on there as a second page. And I printed a bunch of these, stapled them together, and handed them to everybody. And it was something that they could reference, kind of like a player's card or the GM screen that's got handy stuff. And I mean, to this day, that's why I've got it in my hand, is, and it looks all ratty and stuff. Is that front page that's got all the basic stuff on it. I still use that. Mostly I use the skill list, because it's got the skill list with what stat goes with it, or what attribute goes with it, that kind of thing, just because, sometimes my brain doesn't work and I got to remember what ties with what, right? But I'm with Jay. I don't know that there's, the fact that you remember that you can do a called shot to increase your damage if you successfully hit. The increase of the damage when you successfully hit is its own reward. So I don't know that I would do anything additional as far as that's concerned. And then Jay's, I'm just gonna, Jay said all the good stuff, so I'm just gonna harp on that. Do it to them first. If there's something you're like, they never do this, so let me do this to them first, and then they'll get, hey, wait a minute, that's a thing? Is that an ability that guy has? No, this is something you can do too. You run with it. You said, and I find this interesting, Jay said, I've never seen anybody do suppressive fire. And I started building a character specifically to do suppressive fire because it attacks the interaction attacks rather than dodge. But the problem with it is, and I think this is maybe it's a game, we could have the argument that it's a game balancing thing, But if you have to get a player's call and then you do weapon damage, but you can't get any bonus dice. So you'd have to build a character around the idea that you could be relentless, or you could do something to put a bonus dice. Relentless would work with melee, but it wouldn't work with fire combat. But anyway, it becomes a niche at that point that doesn't you don't get to trigger it very often. But I really liked the idea of, yeah, I do everything with my gun.
Yeah.
I'm going to intimidate. Well, how are you going to do that? With my gun. I'm going to shoot him. Well, how do you do that? With my gun.
I turn off my TV.
That's right. With my pow. So yeah, that list of stuff you might want to go point to that in the book. If you're concerned that your players are hamstringing themselves because they're not taking full advantage of all the things they can do, then you might want to point them to that table and then say between 119 and 129, read through that. There's some stuff you can do there that you guys maybe haven't been doing. And then you can start grousing about what you just released upon yourself, because they're going to start doing a bunch of stuff that you really go like, I wish they hadn't done that. So.
Yeah, no, I actually was going to mention what Jay stated is when I first saw.
He said all the good stuff.
Yeah, he did. Jay, you said.
Well, what happens? You keep going to me first.
Right. When I first saw this page, it was one of the first, like, my knee-jerk reaction, because I had followed Torg Eternity Development before it was actually published, and one of their goals was streamlining it. And I remember the combat actions of classic Torg being able to fit on a 3x4 index card, because I made copies, cut them out, and passed them out to my players so that they at least had them. And then when this came out, it was a full page, and I'm like, how is this streamlining when you go from a 3x5 card? But then, as Jay said, when you read this, a lot of it's not actually action and combat options. It's just things like, this is where the shotgun rule is put. Instead of it being a condition on the actual weapon, like unwieldy or something, I think it would fit there. There's a lot of stuff here that just doesn't quite fit. So in 1.5, do expect some streamlining of this chart to put things where in our current opinion they might fit better. And the combat options. As for rewards, I have stated previously that I game master very large groups. 7 is usually my minimum. Usually it's 8 or 9 players. That's not including me. And when they get something like, hey, everybody gets a possibility, or play a Cosm card where every Storm Knight gets 3, that's a lot of possibilities. And I usually don't do the rewards. You call me a bad game master, but if somebody does something cool, that's just hey, you did something cool, and everybody smiles and laughs and talks about it for years and decades to come. But I don't necessarily give out any rewards, because then that just is heaping onto the pile that they're already getting rewards. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I want to say one of my very first Torg Eternity games I game mastered, one of the people used the suppressive fire. I want to say a couple of people have used the weight one, and I want to say, and also in Torganized Play, I want to say Mike at one time used the weight thing. Wanted to wait, and then had to do a little check to see if he was able to do his thing before the opponent did theirs. But yeah, I've used all of them. I have this page printed out also, like Mark does, and I hand the sheet out to everybody, and then it's up to them to use it or not use it. So. And Jay's point of have the bad guys use them, have the opponents use them. That's a really good way to enforce that as well.
And make it clear that it's something anyone can do.
Right. Not it's a special ability. It's this is a combat option.
Or not. I mean,
if they ask
or not.
It. Okay, so let's go to the social perks and hopefully finish up those. We left off with Read the Room being the next social perk. This is from the Tharkold digital only set, so this was from a Tharkold backer. And the
Is the Bratva Fixer.
yeah, Jay knows
Yes.
Yep, Mark doesn't
all
have
of
this
these. Prereq. You need 1 or more ads in evidence analysis and 2 or more ads in streetwise. When you encounter a group of people, test streetwise as a free action to intuit their power dynamics and social intricacies. On a success, you know who leads whom, how members are expected to act, social mores and taboos, etc. Any test to fit that group dynamic is favored for the duration of this interaction, such as persuasion to seem relatable, fine to spot, odd behavior, trick to impersonate. On a good success, all social tests, including intimidation, taunt, and verbal trick attacks, are also favored against rank and file members. On an outstanding success, that expands to the leaders. And there's a note stating that using this perk is a contradiction below social axiom 25. So Jay, what are your thoughts on Read the Room?
This is a very good, like very powerful perk, except that that contradiction under social 25 is the one kicker for you there, because it does require streetwise rolls. You are always making a roll on it, so there's always a chance. But that said, I would presume you probably will be a 25 social character if you're taking this, or a realm runner, either way. So it is a bit of a limitation, but if this is a thing where you have to infiltrate kind of a lab, you could just go in, look and see, okay, this guy's in charge. That's the HR person. I just got to keep my head down. Or if it's an Adino's tribe, who's the opt-in, who's the go-tac, who to talk to, who leads the hunt. It'll all just help you sneak in. So yeah, it's a really good one. And then the fact that it makes any sort of basically non-maneuver interaction attacks favored against the goobers, or even everybody, if you get an outstanding on this, makes it pretty good.
Mark, your thoughts?
So excuse me, choking on oxygen there. My first thought on this is you're going to have to figure out, GMs, you're going to have to figure out how long or short you want to let that initial streetwise roll carry forward, because when you go in, you get this for free. And I love the fact that you get it for free, right? You read the room, you've walked in, you see this social setting, and you assess your situation. Boom, give it to them for free. Off we go. And how long does that read last? So, I would say from my perspective, and you guys get to weigh in on this if you want to, I would say from my perspective, as long as that social dynamic remains intact, right? But then the question becomes, how frequently are you going to let that streetwise get re-rolled to reestablish it, right? Because if you're dynamic, you've got a boss and he's got a couple of junior lieutenants around and some mooks that are congregating, and some other people. If a lieutenant leaves, or if another lieutenant shows up, when do you reassess? If if it's a different, it all breaks up. If that scene is over, does it last for that scene? Whatever. I mean, because if you walked out, let's say you're in a party on the inside of the building when you read the room, and then you walk out knowing that a subset of those people are coming out in a little bit, and here comes the boss and some subset, do you have to reread the room when they've left that engagement, right? And now you're in a different setting. Sometimes the dynamics when you're in a public setting versus a private setting shift a little bit, because you don't want to let on anything. Somebody's a figurehead in public, but in private someone else is pulling the strings, right? So the reality has shifted, but do you get a new read on that, and how often do you do that? So GMs, if you know this is coming, you're going to have to think through that a little bit. The other cool thing about it, and I love this perk because this is a huge role-playing opportunity. This just begs for role playing. If your face character doesn't take this perk and he has access to it, because Mark doesn't have the book and he didn't know it was there. I'm going to be looking for it to put on my face. This is a fantastic opportunity to get in there and get it, work your wedge in where you want it, the way you want it, so you can get an edge on negotiations, or get something going when you need to sway somebody's opinion. So just be ready for that RP, that level of RP, because your face character who comes in there and gets that good streetwise, blows it out of the water. Now they're going to want to take advantage of that and start manipulating things, moving chess pieces around the board and getting social things going on, which is, I think, a cool avenue that doesn't happen enough in Torg. We're all guns and explosions and weird science gadgets and ray guns and things like that, right? But this is a social combat, if you will, and I think that's just a cool way to do it.
Yeah, I love that this is a Tharkle perk. I completely can see this being somebody comes in, assessing the situation quickly to figure out who's in the pecking order in the dominance chain or your chain of command or any type of thing. Yes, do get with your game master to figure out how long these are going to take. As Mark stated, it'll be different if you're just with the say a supervisor and their, if we use a office workplace type thing, a supervisor and their employees can have a dynamic, and as soon as the manager comes in, you have a different dynamic. And then if that
absolutely.
manager leaves and a manager of a different section comes in, then that could be different. Or if the assistant director any time there is a shift of people, this could be something that you would want a new test to occur, and they could get better as they get more people. They start really being able to figure out where this dynamic's going, or the opposite. If they fail, it's kind of like, no, things just went really weird and not what you had first assessed the situation. So I like that it is a test that you have to do. I do like, as Mark said, it's a free action. You don't have to spend a lot. It's a quick, you look around, you notice stuff, but great role playing potential in it. And any last comments before we move?
Yeah, don't let it be abused. I mean, just because one person left the room or came into the room, that doesn't mean you get to you did a crappy streetwise and you want a chance to redo it. No, it's got to be significant. It's got to matter. And don't let them abuse it and just like roll 8 times and then take the one that they like.
The situation should change. That power structure should change.
It mentions, it says it's for the duration of this interaction.
So that's another thing you'll have to determine. Is it talking?
So as long as
HR person, or is it?
Yeah, I would think it's like if you went into the office, as long as you were at the office, it would be that rule. And then if you left and came back later, it'd be a new rule. I don't know if I would change it if people came in and out, unless I was really fishing for them to disconnect or something. But,
well, maybe you might make it if they made a spot check, let's say, because you've got in Liamon's example, you've got the manager came in, right?
Yeah.
And you don't know how the employees relate to that manager. And so you get your streetwise, and now you do. Well, what if a peer manager comes in or another manager, and now these two square off, and you can tell that they think that they're equal. Well, is one of them actually equal? And the other one, or is one of them want to be equal, or is one of them a weak leader who is not, and how do the employees, and you got this again, you've got social combat going on.
I get what you're saying, but I would probably lean more on, once you've read the room, if you have figured it out, you could probably go off the reactions of the people you have figured out already.
You could,
they're reacting, just to keep it from being a ton of dice rolling, right?
However you want to run it.
If it substantially changes, then
I would say if the dynamic changes, if it's going to be the same thing, I don't see.
And not just like one of the other Storm Knights lights a firecracker in a garbage can or something.
No. I'm saying you're talking like you figured it out, and so you're talking to one of the guys that you think you can get information from, and all of a sudden his demeanor changes,
Yeah.
Why did his demeanor change? You don't know, but now you got to figure it out. And so, maybe give me a fine check to see if you can figure out what has changed. Well,
And it's favored.
somebody new came in. Well,
So
who is that guy? I don't
be
know.
fluid, game masters. Determine
There
how
you
this
go.
would work for you, and your player. This is also another one that if a player expresses interest, I would have a little discussion over. This is, my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Coming up with whatever the end result is. Everybody at least understands what these interactions are going to. The duration of this interaction. It's the key phrase, as Jay pointed out, that you're going to have to figure out your definition for.
Oh
So
yeah, no, absolutely.
let's move on to T Master. T Master is from the Aurorsh sourcebook. It requires a Charisma 8 or better and at least one add in Scholar. You also need to be from Aurorsh, although I have heard people state that Pan Pacifica would also work in certain places. Anyone can seep a pot of tea and serve it to friends, but the true masters of tea making can tap into Aurorsh's law of perseverance and improve their chances of fighting the forces of evil by serving afternoon tea for up to 6 people. Basically, what it is, afternoon tea must be done between the hours of 4 and 5 o'clock. Although if you spend a possibility, you can do the ritual at any time, but it can only be done once a day. You take about an hour to serve the tea. The tea master makes a charisma plus scholar test. That's another one of those neat, using a non-standard attribute with a skill that we've talked about previously, and the guest may assist as a combined action. You need the tea and at least one guest are required, but if the tea master serves tea with dainty sandwiches, scones, and pastries, the test is favored. If the participants dress up in finery, at least semi-formal day dresses, frock coats, hats, and gloves, the test is up. The benefit depends on the success level. Standard is the tea master and all guests draw a destiny card. Good is all guests draw a destiny card. The tea master draws 2 cards and then chooses one of them and discards the other. And the outstanding is as good, but the tea master draws 2 cards and keeps both. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on Tea Master?
Love Tea Master. Tea Master is a fantastic perk. And this one, again, you get some more RP opportunity. GMs, this is a shot to make your players care about their clothes. You can make them spend money on getting good clothes and taking care of them. If they've got their high suit on and a grenade goes off, guess what? It's no longer that level of clothing. Maybe you got to take it in and have it fixed or something like that. You go into the living land. Living land has a tendency to damage or destroy things. I mean, clothing absolutely gets degraded in the living land, right? So all of these frock coats and I would step it up and not just say you've got to have Victorian dresses and suits to make this work. But if you had, let's say you had an electric samurai who takes meticulous care of their armor to the point where it is show ready, formal wear, that would work, because to me it's all up here in the mind of the person participating in the ceremony, because it's cult magic, right? So we'll let that slide. If the Adinos is wearing, if the Gotak has formal, this is what I would wear to a service, to bury someone or to pass someone on to the next life, then to me that would suffice too, even though the Victorian will look at the savage and not accept it. Like, what do you mean? This is what we dress up in. So, be again, that to Lehman's point, be flexible with that. But by the same token, don't let this get abused, because this is another one where there are all kinds of bonuses and favored and all kind of stuff that goes along with wearing nice clothes and serving dainty cakes and all of this. And so, the tea master is ultimately the one that's working the magic, if you will. And if the tea master isn't willing to accept what's going on, as if the Gotak has got day old Tyrannosaurus Rex steaks, and that's not dainty cakes, but no matter how you present it, right? But whatever, you just don't let it get abused so that your player can just claim to get the bonuses. Make them work for that one, because this really is a lot of fun, and hold them to that timeline. No, it's not time for tea.
Jay, your thoughts on Tea Master?
Yeah, I agree. This is one of the most flavorful perks in the whole game. I think it really fits the Victorian aspect. I don't know if I agree with what you said earlier, Lehman, about like I've heard people mention it, like allowing Pan Pacifica characters to use
I didn't
it,
say
but
I
don't
agreed. I said I've heard people want it.
I don't think that really
Well,
works
in the
because,
ring, in Pan Pacifica ring, Pan Pacifica horror.
Well, yeah, in the mixed zone, maybe, right? Because it's the fact that it's an Orosh, it's being fueled by the law of perseverance. But also it's just also an issue that some people have with Pan Pacifica, because you got to remember, Pan Pacifica is the realm of science and corporate espionage, not the realm of Asian things. So
Well, I mean,
if you want to
they
have
can't-
something that's a Japanese like tea ceremony or something like that, you could have people in Orosh do that. And this is kind of going to what Mark was saying. If you have people replacing the dainty sandwiches with an elaborate tea ritual and like how they pour it and everything like that, and the clothes are changed to like some ceremonial hakama or something instead of the what Victorians would wear, then I would still let that work just fine. Like just because the character is from Orosh doesn't mean they're suddenly a Victorian, right? So there's probably tons of people from Myanmar and other sections that have elaborate rituals that would work
or
as
from
well.
different places in Gaia that
True,
across.
because we do know there are people from the other places. I don't know if there's so much from, because if they were even mentioned in the new book, like Nippon or Indus, but that was from old Torg or classic.
But so clarify something. How is somebody from Pan Pacific? Were you just saying participating in the ritual? Not, you can't take, because they can't take it. They don't qualify for it.
Right. No, that's what some people have mentioned. Oh, I could see this also being allowed, and that's why I'm saying no. I don't think it would be, right?
Well,
because it's
okay.
an Orosh thing.
I don't
Pan
want
Pacifica,
this to
you got to be from Orosh to take it. You can't.
Right. Yeah,
you can't take it as a perk, but I would let them participate.
Yeah, they can participate for sure. Yeah,
let me
officially, you cannot.
There we go.
Clarification. Officially, no. I said I heard people who wanted to be Pan Pacifica and take this because of what Jay said. Oh, they have tea ceremonies too. I did not mean to be my endorsement. I meant it to be this is something that people have talked about, because we are at least open that different game masters are going to allow different things. All three of us, I think, are on the same that this is an Orosh thing. It fits it well.
Yeah.
But you could also, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Victorian thing if you bring in that aspects as a different type of Oroshan character.
As long as it's ceremonial in some way, basically.
Oh, yeah. Or formal.
Formal, yes.
Which isn't necessarily ceremonial.
Preferably both.
In my own game, I had an NPC do this, and it changed the course of the game. We were going through one of the mega adventures, and to kind of at least dilute spoilers, there is a point where the group will meet up with a Victorian, and the group was always, there's always that paranoia of, is this actually a bad guy in disguise? And it was a bad guy in disguise, offered them to a tea ceremony. They went through it and role played their butts off in this, in character, while out of character, knowing that they were going to get betrayed afterwards. And actually, their role playing was so good that in the instance of when this person was supposed to attack them actually sided with them instead. And I just, went with it because the party did such a good job. This and that the read the room are really, really good role playing ins that you can take some mechanical benefits and do it through role playing. And what we were talking about earlier with the combat action rewards, it's stuff like this that gives the rewards when you do, your role playing and stuff. And that's what I like seeing. So I think we all agree Team Master is a wonderful social perk. It really fits Orosh as a game master and stuff. Do look at the requirements and make it known to or have your group try it, and then you can explain, it worked in this case, it didn't work in this case. We did it this way, but you're just grasping for straws to try to get that favored or get that up. It actually makes it look tacky, so it doesn't, quite work. But all good fun. This is one of those social perks that when I first read it, I was just like, what? And then I started looking at it and going, no, this is actually a pretty cool perk. So let's move on to a beta perk, Trash Talker. This is from Heroes of the Possibility Wars, Volume 1, and the beta clearance players primer. You need at least 5 ads in taunt, so you're going to have pretty much maxed out your taunt to do this, unless it's a mastery skill. And when taunt is an approved action, the When taunt is the approved action, the multi-target penalties for taunt interaction attacks are halved, -1 per additional target instead of the usual -2. So Jay, what are your thoughts on Trash Talker?
Well, I think you and I have kind of already given our opinions on this,
Yeah.
right?
For similar ones, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, same as that. Except that, pretty much everything that's immune to Intimidate is also immune to Taunt. So, pretty much the exact same.
Yeah, I think the only difference is the other ones were a lot of maybe needed the social axioms or
No. I mean, there's the exact other one of this.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Do we have 2 perks that are the exact same thing?
Yeah, one is Taunt, the other's Intimidation. I can't remember what it's called now. I closed it.
Now I see. Okay.
So I figure we've already talked about
was the same thing.
No.
So
Mark hasn't.
Mark, your thoughts on Trash Talker?
Well, it sounds at first blush, it's really cool because you're like, ooh, I can just get everybody. And yeah, you can. But it's kind of limited, as Jay was pointing out or hinting at. It's a limited use perk, and it's a beta tier perk. And so, I mean, there's a lot of stuff at beta tier that are really cool. And I don't know that I would at beta tier be spending my perk on this, given the fact that it only triggers if taunt is an approved action. So, I'm going to be if I've got 5 ads in taunt, I'm planning on taunting with regularity already. This is going to be I just get to do it easier when this comes up. And to Jay's point, all those mobs that you can't taunt or intimidate. Okay.
I'll just say I'm probably going to pick this with Pierre because he's French.
Taunt you a second time.
And not because because I'm actually not optimizing. I usually, when I build a character, I focus them on something really good, and then I usually add a couple of perks or skills that is absolutely not good for them, like 5 charisma, but I'm gonna get a 5 taunt because that's the thing he thinks he's good at, or something like that. And that is Pierre. I think I actually did get the charisma up to I bought it from a 6 to a 7, so I actually spent points.
Didn't you buy it recently? Yeah,
buy it. He's a fighter. He is whirlwind.
he's good at it.
Trademark weapon. has the sacred weapon so he can hit ethereal things, but I got his taunt up to 5 because he's French. And reading this, he's beta. I'm like, I was trying to figure out what my next perk is, and I'm going to do this not because it's great, because it's good in character. And that's
because it's right.
So that is, I'll say this: there's a lot of perks that people might read and go, why would anybody choose this? And it's because somebody is going to choose it not because it's optimal, but because it fits the character. And that's what I'll say about Trash Talker.
It's still useful. I mean, even in a dump stat, even with a charisma of 5, if you put 5 ads, you're hitting a basic success. And most, we're running at beta tier on the stream, and we're running up against guys that have a 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
In these things. Yeah, and you're still contributing, right? Multi-action, taunt this guy for an approved action to get a card. Oh, and for Pierre, this actually, now that you mention that might be where this makes a lot of sense, because if you've decided to dump stat charisma or dump stat at what's intimidate. See, this is where I'm using my thing. Spirit. Nobody dump stat spirit, but if you got a low spirit, you dump stat charisma a lot, and taunt is right. So take this, and when taunt comes up as an approved action, all of a sudden you can really do a good job taunting 3 guys without too much difficulty, maybe 4. And it's your dump stat. Yep, sure. Okay.
So yeah, sometimes I'm all for the flavor, and reading that was like, yeah, that I just thought that would fit my character. So
that's definitely Pierre.
Let's move on to Wealthy. Wealthy is from the core rules. Its prerequisite is none, and basically some people are born into riches and prosperity while others earn it the hard way. The character has $10,000 worth of starting gear instead of the usual 1,000, and persuasion or streetwise is favored when testing to purchase an item or service. So, Mark, your thoughts on Wealthy?
In a game that doesn't really deal with loot very much, because you're working for a government entity that just feeds you ammo and whatever, Wealthy's kind of not the biggest. It's a great, I think it's a great starting perk, and it helps you at low levels get up to higher levels. It kind of loses its value later on, unless GMs are willing to on the fly run with, hey, I need to get, I need tuxes for the entire party.
For my team,
I know a guy. That's right. We're in Hong Kong. I'll get you custom fitted tuxes. Let's all go. I know a guy that did that. I don't hang out with him anymore, but it's a thing. Sometimes you do stuff like that because that's just okay. So yeah, Wealthy is cool. Be careful with it though, because this is another one that could be you have to have a conversation with your player about how far Wealthy's going to get you, because then they're going to want to, we're going to take a yacht from here to there, or I've got this private plane that, if that makes sense, GM, roll with it. But don't become this isn't a piggy bank to always have an excuse for why you can get the big expensive thing for somebody.
Jay, your thoughts on Wealthy?
Well, last week, remember I kind of joked about what are the percentage of Eilish characters that have heirloom.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what are the percentage of parties that don't have at least one character with Wealthy,
if not two?
It seems it seems to come up a ton in all the games that I've run, partially for the starting gear, but the making persuasion and streetwise favored for purchasing things cannot be understated.
And not just
especially
requisitions.
Right. And if the Delphi Council is being a little squeamish about selling you rockets or landmines or flamethrowers or what have you, if Ivan knows a guy You can streetwise and we can go find some of that. And if you're making the requisitions guy, especially if you take arms dealer, like we talked about last week, this can really help with that, and you can get some outrageous results from it. Personally, I kind of think what Wealthy should also allow more requisitions per session too. But I think it's probably best to do it like Mark said and just sort of eyeball it and, well, see how it goes. You want to get some tuxes? Sure. You want to buy another Ferrari? Maybe not, because it's not super wealthy. It's just wealthy.
I've had this
probably.
Go on. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I've had this happen in games where it's the service. It's not necessarily an item. It's hey, we need to get from here to here. So we need a guy who's going to take us, who's willing to take us there and has used it for that, as well as it has been used to buy a boat to go down the Amazon. So
hey, don't forget in the beta primer, you can requisition like a bombing run.
Yeah,
you can probably use it for that too.
I want to say this from what I've seen, this and Famous added together to start off with is usually a really good or a popular combination for, say, a core Earth character.
And you kind of know what you're getting into as the GM then.
Right.
Sure. If you don't, you should.
Yeah.
So
I love the idea though of arms dealer with Wealthy. Lord of War. Where's Nicolas Cage when you need him?
Yeah.
And I did want to mention that this is one of two, or it's the way to get to gadget tier without being beta clearance. Because gadget tier requires Wealthy or beta clearance from the Nile Empire.
You can just
so
Bruce Wayne your way into it.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark your way into getting your gadgets. And then we will finish up with Wiles. Wiles is from the Nile Empire digital only set, meaning a Nile backer is the one that came up with it. Do you know which backer archetype this was?
I can't remember offhand. I was literally looking it up right now.
Prerequisite.
I think it was the one in the red dress.
Lady Hourglass?
No, there's like
just keep going.
Prerequisite is charisma 10 or higher. So rare.
Nope.
Spend a possibility to gain a +5 to your charisma attribute for one test against a single target as you turn on the charm. May not be done as part of a multi-action, or if the test isn't targeting someone specifically, counts as wealth. I'm guessing that means wealthy for other prerequisites. So thoughts, Jay, on Wiles?
It was the purple dress. It was the mysterious lady.
Okay.
All right. Wiles is pretty good actually, and notably, I guess it also leads to Gadgeteer then, right?
Yeah. So it's three ways to get to Gadgeteer.
It's interesting that it's one of the in that it's a social perk, but it requires you to spend a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not a reality perk, but it's something that Ords can't really use. But a +5 is pretty good, and because people are going to ask this, you have to make a decision as to whether this works on requisitions or not, because they will try it. Believe you me. I personally generally don't allow them to do that. I've also had people try to play romance cards on the person in charge of giving them their requisitions, all kinds of stuff. So
haven't had that yet. That's pretty cool.
I'm surprised, actually, Mark, that on Wednesday we haven't had somebody try a romance the quartermaster.
Guess what we're going to have next time when I get a romance card, though? Let's see what Jim does with that.
But a +5 is a better bonus than you get from like almost anything. So.
And with the prereq of needing a 10, you basically have a base 15 to before you make any rolls or use any cards.
Without the persuasion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Mark,
but I'm going to look at this from a different perspective because you got to spend a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of the perks that are I must spend a possibility, because you only get 3 an act, right? Unless you do some wild and crazy stuff, you get core earth possibility, whatever. That I need that to soak. I need that for, in case I go down. I gotta test for defeat. And +5, you're not wrong, Jay. +5 is freaking really strong. And with a 10, as Lehman said, with a 10, you're on a base 15. However, I'm going to spend a possibility anyway. Let's look at it from the perspective of I'm a good charisma character. I got an 8 or a 9 or whatever. If I'm going to spend a possibility on it, okay, I got a base. Let's assume a base 10. I go from a 0. If I got a median roll 8, 9, or 10, and I get a 10 on it, I go from an 8, which is -2, a 9, which is -1, and a 10, which is -1, to an 18 or a 19, which is 5 or 6. That's a 6 or a 7-point swing for that same possibility that I just spent.
Or you could do both.
Or you could do both, sure. But
I will say,
but that's 2 possibilities out of the pocket.
I will say characters who take wiles will probably also be the kind of player to aggressively trade for romance cards and have a surplus of possibilities.
No argument whatsoever. But I am averse to triggering a perk with a possibility. It's the leadership perks where you got to spend a possibility this, spend a possibility that, and then you get to the perk that lets you be vulnerable, very vulnerable to trigger those same things. Much more useful to me. Is it game balance? Sure. You spend more time to get to that thing that makes it easier to do. There's no such mitigation on this one. If you want to do this, you're going to spend a possibility on it. And okay, I'm spending a possibility for +5, which is essentially, in my head, that's how it comes out. It shakes out to I'm spending a possibility for a +5, and that +10 that the possibility could be if I just spent it on the roll, to me, is a better economic use of that possibility. So it makes a lot of sense that this would be a good perk to put on villains. Sure, because it makes a lot. I'm going to try and interact with you or take you down with some kind of something there.
That's actually a good question, because this is something we lightly touched on last week, but didn't really. How often do you use persuasion rolls against players? Because I know a lot of games are always like the player is the one in charge of deciding what they do. Where some games are like, if you've had a skill rolled on you, you should act this way. Some people will be like, if you do act this way, I'll give you a shiny possibility, or something like that. How do you feel about that?
I like the fate mechanic to wherein I can tempt you. I have succeeded at this thing, and you should be persuaded, but I'm going to let you choose. And that's where Torg is, right? Torg is the players have agency on what their characters do, unless it's mind control. And that's mind control. You've lost a contest. It's not a let me persuade you to do a thing. Now you have to act like you like me because I persuaded you, and you don't like me and you don't want to like me. Mind control is a whole different ballgame, because I've broken your will and I'm forcing you to do something, and you still don't like me, but you're going to do it anyway. And Mike, I give you all props. You're fantastic at that. You rock. You're the best I've ever seen at that. If anybody listening, if you ever get Mike in your game and you get the chance to mind control him, you need to do it. It's one of the best things in the world. Sorry, I just made you a target, Mike.
It's one of the very few, and I point to it as a party conflict can be fun. Because there was a time when he was mind controlled and he was playing his character trying to do stuff to stop us, and we were trying to stop him. And normally we don't like that in Torg Eternity, because you have heroes and you have villains. It worked so well, but you have to have the right people and the right mindset to do it.
Oh yeah, my group loves that stuff.
It was in the Wednesday night stream. I don't remember. It was when we played. I won't tell you what it is, so I don't give spoilers out here. But if you watch the wedding, it was, in my opinion, for me, it was one of the top 3 or 4 role playing events in game ever. For me, it was that good. He did such a good job. I mean, I know that's not what we're talking about here, but we are at this point. Rabbit hole. Persuasion. Your point. I love the idea of holding up a possibility, saying if you will be persuaded the way I want you to be, I will give you this possibility. I'll absolutely. I've never done it before that way because that's a fate mechanic.
Right.
But if that were if we introduced that as a thing in Torg Eternity, I'd absolutely trigger stuff like that more often. I don't, because I don't like the idea of telling my players, you must now do this thing because I persuaded you. Well, okay, I didn't persuade you.
And they know it's like a trap and a bad
Right,
idea
right.
out of
Yeah.
the character the whole time.
Yeah. And they're like, I don't want to do this. Whatever. So I don't like that idea in Torg Eternity as a mechanic. I love it in Fate because you got a different set of mechanics behind character creation in Fate that specifically lend and play to that you don't have in Torg Eternity, except for maybe this or a few other niche situations.
I'll just say, as the spending of possibility, you might also look at your group and your game master and your table. Are we a table that goes through cards and gets possibilities so that at the, towards the end of the act, we all have 12? Or are we a group that has, down to our last or no possibilities at the end of the act? So some of my groups I've been in have they're always at 0 because they're spending them for everything. They roll a 2 and they'll spend it because maybe I'll explode. And then other ones are just hoarding them. And so this will be one. Does your character, does your group usually flow with possibilities? Do they not have possibilities? And that could be a thing that determines whether or not this will be useful for you. +5, the charisma attribute added to the 10 starts you off with a 15. If you're one that you're not worried about your possibilities, then and you're a social character, this would be great to add with some of the other perks that we've talked about. Having said that does wrap up our perks. So we got through 5 perks in about an hour, minus the
and 2 emails
and the 2 emails. So everything flowed correctly. So we do thank you for listening. We do thank you for sending in your comments and questions in your emails. That's at torgdcd@gmail.com. Send us those emails. We will read them and answer the questions, or just listen to the comments that you send. But once again, we are Jay, Lehman, and Mark for the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings. And until next time, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.